Okay, this is just a short guide for SPSS. So in Windows, I'm going to press Start, go down to IBM Statistics, which you should have installed. You get a free license from the library. IBM SPSS Statistics 23. Takes a little while to open. Most of these packages do. And that depends on the quality of the laptop. And then, as we covered in the seminar, or as we're going to cover in the seminar this week, and as we covered next week, we've got to take our data and stick it in so that we can work on it. You can OK this. You don't really need to do anything. I'm just going to click New Data Set rather than opening up anything. And then I've got this blank view, and it's got the two things that we're used to: your output viewer and your where your data lives, and then how you sort your variables out between the two tabs at the bottom left. So we're going to use the same practice data, and I've got to incorporate this into SPSS. Now remember that it makes a lot of sense when you're doing questionnaires that you have a participant number so that you can go back and check things, and that works quite nicely too. But in terms of bringing it into SPSS, it's not really necessary. It's not a variable as such. So what we're going to do is go to Excel. Now, if you remember, we need to code up males and females. The way we did that is we open up a new column. You can do this in SPSS, but Excel is designed for this sort of thing, makes it far easier. So we're going to call this gender underscore code. And the reason that we use the underscore is, if you remember from the seminars, that SPSS doesn't allow you to use spaces in variable names. And in order to determine, we need a 1 or a 0 next to this if we're going to use it in SPSS in any kind of meaningful way. So we're just going to put an if statement in there. Whoops, if. So it's if, open bracket, and then it says logical test if, value if true, value if false. So the logical test here is if this number equals, this cell equals M, then we're going to call that, so that's the logical test. Value if true, it goes bold. Well, the value if true is going to be 0, another comma, value if false, 1. And what that is just a logical test, which means if the cell immediately to my left, B2, is an M, remember, if it's a string, which is letters rather than a number, and you need to put it in commas, then the value, if true, is going to be a 0. So all M's are going to be zeros. If it's not an M, it's an F. And because there's only 2 outputs, I can do it this way. You can do more fancy things, but this is the best way if you've only got 2. If it's an F, then if it's anything other than an M, it's going to be a 1. And we'll just play about with that in a minute. But just press enter, and as expected, there's an M in there, so I've got the 0. If I double click the square, then I've got all of this. And as we go down to F, then I've got the 1. There's one issue with this. The issue is if I go here and put B, then I get a 1. So you need to be sure that you're only getting 2. Otherwise, if it's an M, it's a 0. If it's anything else, it's a 1. So there's potential for error there. Now I've got my gender codes, I can copy and paste them over. So all I'm going to do is highlight all of this. No, I'm not, because you don't want to include, this is important, you don't want to copy across the data. You should highlight the data, which is 75 people. I'm going to press Control-C. You can right-click or do whatever you want to do to copy, or even use the things up here. Control-C is a shortcut. Go across to SPSS, which is here. I'm looking at the data view. Go up here, and I'm just going to press Control-V. And here, data. You can see up here that the variables aren't named. And had I copied the like I initially set out to do incorrectly, had I copied these across as well by highlighting the columns, then here would have been the actual column headings rather than the data sets, which isn't great. So now, as you've already done, we need to code out the variables. The best way I know to do that is to minimize that, not minimize, just make it smaller. And then certainly for variable code, so that is gender underscore code. I'm just going to go through all of those: age, height, weight, two. I'm in my office at the moment, so I might get interrupted in a minute, in which case I'll just pause it up. So type numeric, this is all fine. The width, we don't need that. We only need a 1 or a 0, so just for brevity, and we don't need any decimal places. As I don't think, looking at the data, we need, let's just clean this up. So I'm going to say width probably down to 4, decimal places 1, that's perfectly sufficient. In height, it's all whole numbers, and it's never going to be a 2 or a 4. Weight is probably, no, it's all whole numbers as well, so we'll reduce that down to 3. BMI is, we'll reduce that down to 4. I'm not quite sure whether it counts the decimal or not, and 1 decimal place is perfectly fine. And the BREC2 is, let's just reduce it down to 4, no decimal places, and the same for GPAC. There are all sorts of nerdy reasons why you have to do that, but it's just good practice. And then finally, the other thing that we need to do, there's 2 things we need to do. We need to, this is nominal, because that's the, and then everything else is scale. Scale, in terms of what SPSS understands, covers interval and ratio data. Okay, so that's them all coded up. The only other thing we need to do is, I believe it's under values, so gender code. We did this last time, so the value, which is a 0, becomes male, and that just means when you're doing graphs and things like that, that it understands what the 0 is, and then if it's a 1, it's a female. Okay, now and you can see that it's entered the values in here. You can play about with all sorts of things, but there's no real reason. And then we go back to our data set, and you can see that everything's all coded up nicely. And we can then, what you can do, right, to save yourself having to go through this step again and again and again, is you can code these up once, and then you can save it as a data set from SPSS. So it's called an SPV file, and if somebody manages to code their data set up in record time in the seminars, probably what I'll do in my seminar group is I will take an I'll get one of you to save it as an SPV file, and then I'll put that on Moodle, so that next week when we look at differences, you won't need to go through this input stage again. It is well worth reviewing how to do this again and again, because you will need to do this for the workbook. We're not doing the workbook tasks on these data. You'll have a new data set, so you will need to revisit this several times, which is why I've done a recording. Okay, that's it. I'm going to do another one in a minute, which looks at how you do a descriptive analysis using SPSS. I know we've covered it, but it's worth doing because you're going to need to do that for the workbook before you choose to do your inferential tests. Okay, that's it for now.